Positive habit pattern. Positive habit pattern is a part, or a key essential part I should say, of your mental training skills. Now you may be asking yourself, what is a positive habit pattern? It can come in the form of language, it can come in the form of the way you think, it can come in the form of the way you do just about everything. Sports psychologists and psychiatrists have what they call the negative habit pattern, and that is, I guess, the antithesis of what I'm going to talk about here. For instance, here's an example of a negative habit pattern. I never do anything right. I'm going to amount to anything. Why does it always happen to me? The sun is falling, the sky is falling, this, that, and the other. You can come up with all kind of different examples. The bottom line is, if you are able to repeat that type of language and or create those type of pictures in your mind over and over again, then you have what a lot of scientists call negative habit pattern. Okay, we're gonna flip it over. We're gonna talk about positive habit pattern. So that's part of the definition, the opposite of what I just said, or the actual what I just said, which is the opposite of a positive habit pattern. A positive habit pattern would be the complete opposite, in other words. And here is what my definition is: creating positive, productive thoughts and images on a continual basis to elicit high performance. Now, that high performance can come in the form of anything: speaking, writing, riding your bike, wrestling, doing your homework, going to school, performing well at your job. The list is limitless and endless. The bottom line, though, is how can you create those situations over and over again? The first step in just about anything is awareness. And how can we become more aware? Several different ways that you can track your positive production of thoughts and images and words is to create a ledger. On one of the other videos I talked about creating a ledger. I'm not certain what it was, but if you create a ledger and imagine in your mind right now just a T, the line across the top, a line intersecting in the middle of that line across the top. On one side put positive words, on the other side put negative words, or it could be positive thoughts or negative thoughts, or positive statements or negative statements. Can you get the picture? The idea behind that is so that you can track what you're saying and thinking about during the day, and that is how you can become more aware of it. A lot of times when I was working with athletes, again, I was a coach at the United States Olympic Education Center for 8 years, and in that time period you learned a lot, or at least I learned a lot, and the athletes learned a lot too. One of the things I became aware of almost immediately was, you're a negative coach. And perhaps I might have been a negative coach the first year and a half, just because I was feeding them what they were saying to me. In other words, what the athletes would say 9 times out of 10, and this is remarkable, and I think it comes from lack of confidence, insecurity, fear, and doubt. A lot of times what they would say is, oh, I'm never going to be able to get this skill. And quickly, you gotta, if you hear that, you have to be able to, in your mind, turn that around. I haven't gotten the skill yet, but if I keep working on it, I will get the skill. That is an example of a positive habit pattern, and the prior to that was a negative habit pattern. Nonetheless, getting back to the point, the first couple of years I wasn't even aware of it. Then I became aware of it quickly, but I was saying the same things the athletes were saying, and they thought it was a byproduct. The way that they were saying things was a byproduct of how I was actually coaching, and there may have been a little bit of give and take. It may have been, but if I reflect, and when I do reflect, I was saying some of the same things they were saying, and then I turned the tide, as it were. I started really focusing on my language skills and the way that I was thinking, so that would be a catalyst for them, that would stimulate their way of thought. And then, believe it or not, the tide actually did start to turn, because when I would hear them say something, I would say, hey, can you rephrase that in a different way? An example of it would be something like this. A lot of times if you ask athletes or students or people that you're working with what they want to do, they'll tell you what they don't want to do. Here's an example. I do not want to finish last in the race or the tournament or on my test. Is this similar way, but a negative form of saying this: I would like to finish in the top half, or the top third, or the top fifth. They're both saying where you want to finish. One is saying I don't want to finish at the bottom. The other one is saying I want to finish at the top. Can you see the clear distinction between them both? I will give you another example. Tell me what your goals are. I don't want to feel bad about myself, and I don't want to have misery in my life, and I don't want to think about things that are going to make me upset. again, those are things that they do not want to do, which is somewhat of a negative habit pattern. Those thoughts and those words are in their mind, and they've got to replace them and with seeds of positive habit patterns. In other words, they could tell me what your goals are. I would like to be able to write clearly, speak clearly. When I step on the mat, shake her hand with conviction and let her know that she is in for a really tough battle. That's proactive. That's saying what you would like to happen in a positive form, in a productive way, but that only happens with, guess what? Practice. How can you practice that? In the examples that I just gave you, and you can use imagery and self-talk, some of the things that we talked about on the other videos. Your habits and or your patterns are there because you've done them over and over and over and over again. In essence, you have been practicing whatever type of habit pattern you have from the last second that you could think of and probably until right now. And how you can track that again is with a ledger. Start writing stuff down. How was I thinking today? I thought this way. I thought that way. I said 7 positive things. I said 8 I said 10 negative. And then they, maybe they're balanced or something like that. Well, ultimately, it's less likely for you to be perfect, but it is likely for you to search and explore and try to reach excellence. In that way, now you're a little bit closer to creating a positive habit pattern. In your mind, you can also do the same thing. Okay, you're saying, oh, they're all in my mind, aren't they? Yes, but I mean with imagery. I'm suggesting that in your mind, you can create positive habit patterns as well. In your mind, prior to the practice starting, you can go through what it feels, a really good practice feels like. And you can feel those sensations throughout your body. Or you can, if you know you're getting ready to do a particular skill, or if it's a wrestling practice, if you're getting ready to do a particular movement, you can actually see yourself performing that movement absolutely flawlessly. Or you can see yourself overcoming adversity. For instance, maybe you got taken down in the last tournament with a double leg. Now you replay that, except you edit it, right? You edit with the positive, productive thoughts of a new habit pattern. You see yourself actually doing the counter to the skill and then going behind. And there's been a lot of research done by biomechanists and sports psychologists that suggests that if you see yourself doing the skill, it's almost the same as physically practicing the skill, because your brain sends the same type of nerve impulses to the muscles. And that's crazy to think about, but it's actually true. Look it up. You can Google it and then you can figure out all the stuff that I'm talking about. Nonetheless, if you're sending those positive sort of actions, impulses through your mind, through your muscles, in a way that is going to elicit you overcoming adversity or seeing yourself feeling and acting in a really good way, you start to create a positive habit pattern in your mind. So not only can you speak positively by just changing the way that you language things and putting it in a proactive way, not what you're not going to do, but actively stating what you're going to do, you can also do it with your mind through the form of imagery. Instead of seeing the worst thing ever possibly happen to you in your mind, you can put a positive habit pattern in your mind of continuously seeing yourself, even if you actually get thrown on your back, maybe you fight off your back, even if someone puts a half in and runs you over, where you quickly develop, and you need to work with a coach probably on this to learn how to develop the skills, you see yourself continuing to fight. And sometimes that's the best thing, just not giving up. Not giving up is a positive habit pattern. How can I make that a positive statement? Continuing to fight, continuing to thrive, continuing to see the other side, believing in my ability that it's always going to get I'm always going to get a response, as long as I continue to believe that everything is possible and a productive in a positive way. So I've just talked about a little bit of a positive habit pattern. And again, if you listen to those 3 words, positive means productive, it's going to have something good. Habit, which means it's going to happen again and again and again, I'm going to be practicing it. And pattern, which means it's the same type of habit that I'm doing over and over again. Those last 2 words are kind of similar, but the positive habit pattern is something that you can create and that you need to consciously work on, and then it actually does become unconscious, right? And I kind of walked around that thought idea there. Unconsciously, we have habits and patterns that we're doing, and we're not even aware of them. And we can, again, change them by tracking, by paying attention, by being aware. Now you can change your unconscious thoughts that will positively, in a habit pattern, become subconscious and unconscious thoughts. And then in that way, you can change the way you perceive things and then move in a positive direction. Positive habit patterns. Remember, you can find out more information like this at youtube.com, Coach Shannon. Coach Shannon Talks.